Here now to comment on the president's inaugural UN address is Steve Hilton, former Prime Minister David Cameron's director of strategy. He dealt with the UN quite a bit in that position, and he is host of The Next Revolution on FNC. So, Steve, last night on your show, you went through a litany of the scandals, and frankly, you could have spent 1 or 2 or 3 hours doing that. But the question is whether those scandals are the norm or whether they're the exception. I'm inclined to believe that wherever you have an international bureaucracy, this is going to be the norm. The president says you can clean it up. Is it redeemable?
I think you're exactly right. Look, I agree with what the president said, and I wish him well, and I hope they listen to him. But the problem is, as I explained last night, you've heard this exact same message every single time that there's a new Secretary General, a new leader of the UN. Now we have this new guy remember, he's the former socialist leader of Portugal. So, you know, what chance is there of someone from that background coming in and cutting costs and making things more efficient? But you've heard it from Kofi Annan in 1997. You heard it from Ban Ki-moon in 2006. They all come in saying, we're going to do reforms, we're going to make things more efficient, transparent and accountable. And yet the waste and bureaucracy and inefficiency goes on. And I think at the heart of it is actually that the UN is built on the wrong foundations, philosophically wrong, because they're not interested in promoting the things that we know lead to prosperity and the reduction of poverty, things like property rights, the rule of law, free press and independent.
Well, and you're not going to get human rights. You're not going to get human rights from Iran and other regimes like that are on the Human Rights Commission. I mean, come on. Now, we have as president a businessman, and he kind of looks at bottom line figures and tries to see whether we get a return on our investment. He spoke to that point today. Let's take a listen and get your response.
While the United Nations on a regular budget has increased by 140% and its staff has more than doubled since 2000, we are not seeing the results in line with this investment.
Now, again, he's a businessman. He looks at it from a business perspective. I don't think you can do that with an international organization because there's no, as Lauren was saying, there's no accountability. In business there is, at the UN there isn't.
That's exactly right. And the problem is that America, our viewers are paying for this. You know, around a quarter of the
nose
bill
they're paying for it. Absolutely.
Right. But with that funding, you don't get any control because that's where there's the lack of accountability. So I think if you really want to see change happen, then in the end, the president and America are going to have to threaten to withhold the funding. And that, I think, might finally get them to take notice.
Steve, the one thing that the UN can do, or at least has done at least once in my lifetime during the conflict with Iraq, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, the UN got together as a united front to push Iraq out of Kuwait. That was successful. That was the one time I can remember. But we're dealing with a crisis with North Korea right now. Could the UN play any constructive role in dealing with North Korea?
It doesn't seem like that to me, because I think that Kim Jong-un is just not interested in those kinds of normal diplomatic solutions. And I think there's a couple of things that we need to do. One is to get much tougher with China. Every time anyone talks about North Korea, they say, well, the solution is partly to do with China. They've got to put more pressure on. At the moment, we're not putting enough pressure on China. There are things that have been suggested I think, again, could have a bigger impact. For example, the Chinese regime, the communist leadership, they all send their kids to America, to Stanford University, close to where I'm speaking to you from today, our top universities. The elite send their kids here. If you want to really get China's attention, punish the elites, put sanctions on them. And then the next thing I think we need to do is to actually start being aggressive about these missile tests. We need to start shooting down these missiles and see if that gets their attention.
We're going to be talking more about that in a minute. Steve Hilton, great to see you. The Next Revolution every Sunday night on FNC. Terrific stuff, Steve. Thank you.